I never thought my snow machine would become the most controversial piece of equipment in Whitefish, Montana. But here we are, sitting in a heated HOA meeting with 15 angry neighbors glaring at me like I just committed murder. My name is Zimmerman, and I bought my 5-acre property in the Glacier Ridge development 3 years ago specifically because it backed up to national forest land. The whole reason I moved from Seattle was to escape the corporate grind and live somewhere I could actually enjoy winter sports. I'm a software engineer who can work remotely, so geography wasn't a constraint. Montana seemed perfect. Wide open spaces, real winters, and enough land to do what I wanted without bothering anyone. The snow machine in question was a Polaris RMK, a beast of a machine I'd saved up for over 2 years. She was cherry red with custom graphics, and she could handle deep powder like a dream. I kept her in my detached garage and used her to access the backcountry trails that started right behind my property line. The National Forest had hundreds of miles of designated snowmobile trails, and my land provided perfect access. Everything was fine for the first 2 winters. I'd wave to neighbors when I fired up the machine, they'd wave back, and life went on. Then the HOA board changed hands last spring. That's when I met Patricia Morrison. Patricia was 53 years old, recently divorced, and apparently had nothing better to do than police the entire neighborhood. She became HOA president in May, and by June, she'd already sent out 17 violation notices to various homeowners. Someone's fence was the wrong shade of brown. Someone else's mailbox was 3 inches too tall. Mrs. Henderson down the street got cited because her lawn was cut to 3 inches instead of the mandated 2.5. I should have seen it coming. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday in November. I was working from home, debugging some code for a client in California, when the mail carrier knocked on my door. He handed me the envelope with an apologetic look. "HOA?" he asked. "Apparently," I said, signing for it. I opened it right there in the doorway. The letter was 2 pages long, printed on official HOA letterhead with Patricia's signature at the bottom in aggressive blue ink. "Dear Mr. Zimmerman," it began. "It has come to the attention of the Glacier Ridge Homeowners Association Board that you are operating a motorized recreational vehicle, specifically a snowmobile, on your property. According to Section 7.3 of the HOA Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, no motorized recreational vehicles may be operated within the boundaries of Glacier Ridge development between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., and all such vehicles must be operated in a manner that does not create excessive noise or disturbance to neighboring properties." I read it twice, then a third time. The language was vague enough to be meaningless. I operated my snow machine during daylight hours, usually leaving around 9 in the morning and returning by 4 in the afternoon. The machine was loud, sure, but no louder than the lawn equipment everyone ran in summer. And technically, I was only operating it on my property long enough to reach the Forest Service boundary, maybe 30 seconds total. The letter continued. "Furthermore, the board has determined that snowmobile operation poses potential safety and liability concerns for the community. Effective immediately, all snowmobile operation within Glacier Ridge is prohibited. Failure to comply will result in fines of $500 per violation, with additional penalties for continued non-compliance." I stood there in my doorway, snow starting to fall around me, completely stunned. They were banning my snow machine, on my own property. The property I'd specifically bought so I could have access to the trails. My phone was in my hand before I'd even thought about it. I called the number listed at the bottom of the letter. It rang 4 times before Patricia answered. "Glacier Ridge HOA, Patricia Morrison speaking." Patricia, this is Derek Zimmerman. I just received your letter about my snow machine. Oh yes, Mr. Zimmerman. I hope the language was clear. We take community standards very seriously. Her voice was clipped and professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath it. She was enjoying this. The language is clear, I said, keeping my voice level, but I don't understand the reasoning. I've been using my snow machine for 2 years without any complaints. It's how I access the national forest trails. We've received multiple complaints about the noise, Patricia said, and the board agrees that snowmobiles are disruptive to the peaceful enjoyment of the community. Multiple complaints. From who? I'm not at liberty to disclose that information. Complaints are kept confidential to protect homeowners from retaliation. I felt my jaw tighten. Patricia, I bought this property specifically because of the trail access. The snow machine is essential for that. I'm not operating it at unreasonable hours, and I'm not using it for joyriding around the neighborhood. It's transportation. The board's decision is final, Mr. Zimmerman. The ban takes effect immediately. If you have concerns about the ruling, you're welcome to attend the next board meeting and present your case. That's scheduled for December 15th. December 15th? That's a month away. You're telling me I can't use my snow machine for a month while I wait for a hearing. That's correct. Good day, Mr. Zimmerman. She hung up. I stood there holding my phone, watching the snow fall harder. This was insane. I owned my property. I paid my mortgage, my property taxes, and my HOA dues every month without fail. The snow machine wasn't violating any county ordinances or state laws. It was just Patricia flexing her newfound power. I spent the rest of that day researching HOA law in Montana. What I found wasn't encouraging. HOAs in Montana have broad authority to enforce covenants and restrictions, and courts generally defer to board decisions unless they're completely arbitrary or violate state law. My best bet was to argue that the ban was unreasonable and exceeded the board's authority under the original covenants. I pulled out my closing documents and found the CC and Articus. Section 7.3, the one Patricia had cited, did mention motorized recreational vehicles, but the language only restricted nighttime operation and excessive noise, nothing about an outright ban. The board had taken existing language and twisted it into something entirely different. That gave me hope. December 15th arrived with 2 feet of fresh snow and temperatures hovering around 15 degrees. Perfect snowmobiling weather. Instead, I was putting on a suit and tie to attend an HOA meeting in Patricia Morrison's living room. Her house was immaculate, decorated in shades of beige and cream that looked like they'd come straight from a furniture catalog. Everything matched. Everything was perfect. There wasn't a speck of dust anywhere. It was the kind of house that made you uncomfortable to sit down. The other board members were already there when I arrived. There was Tom Henderson, a retired accountant who seemed perpetually nervous. Margaret Wu, a nurse who worked nights at Kalispell Regional Medical Center. And Stephen Caldwell, who owned a local insurance agency and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia sat at the head of the dining room table, papers arranged in precise stacks in front of her. She smiled when I walked in, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for coming. Please have a seat. I sat across from her, setting my folder of documents on the table. Thanks for hearing me out. Of course. We always want to be fair. Now, you're here to contest the snowmobile ban. Is that correct? Yes. I believe the ban exceeds the board's authority under the CC and Articus and unfairly targets my property rights. Patricia's smile didn't waver. The board disagrees. We have clear authority to regulate activities that impact community welfare and property values. But the CC and Articus don't give you authority to ban snowmobiles entirely, I said, opening my folder. Section 7.3 only addresses noise and operating hours. I comply with both those restrictions. I operate during daylight hours and the noise is comparable to any other motorized equipment. Tom Henderson shifted uncomfortably. Derek, the thing is, we've had complaints. People are concerned about the noise and the safety issues. What safety issues? I'm operating a vehicle on my own property to access public trails. That's not different from someone driving their ATV or dirt bike, which people do all summer without any restrictions. ATVs don't create the same level of noise, Patricia interjected. And they're not operated in winter when sound carries further. That's not a legal justification for a ban, I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. You can't single out one type of vehicle without a legitimate basis. Margaret Wu spoke up for the first time. Derek, I work nights. The sound of your snow machine wakes me up when I'm trying to sleep during the day. I turned to her. Margaret, I'm sorry about that, but I don't leave until 9 or 10 in the morning at the earliest, and you live 3 houses down from me. If the sound is really that disruptive, we can talk about mitigation measures. Maybe I can adjust my departure times. Or you could just not use it in the neighborhood, Patricia said. You can trailer it to a different access point. The nearest public access is 40 minutes away, I said. And I'd have to drive through town to get there, which means more emissions, more traffic, and more expense. That's completely unreasonable when I have direct access from my property. The board's decision stands, Patricia said firmly. We've heard your objections, but we believe the ban serves the community's best interests. Unless there are any other board members who wish to speak. She looked around the table. Tom and Stephen both looked down at their papers. Margaret met my eyes for a moment, then shook her head. Then we're adjourned, Patricia said. Mr. Zimmerman, you'll receive written confirmation of our decision within 5 business days. The ban remains in effect. I gathered my papers slowly, trying to process what had just happened. They hadn't even seriously considered my arguments. This was a done deal before I'd walked in the door. This isn't over, I said quietly. I'm going to fight this. Patricia's smile finally faded. That's your right, Mr. Zimmerman, but I'd caution you against wasting your money on lawyers. The board's authority is quite clear. I left without responding, climbing into my truck and sitting there for a moment in Patricia's driveway. The snow machine sat in my garage, useless. 2 feet of fresh powder in the mountains, perfect conditions, and I was banned from accessing it. That night, I contacted a lawyer in Kalispell who specialized in HOA disputes. Her name was Jennifer Kowalski, and she had a reputation for not backing down from board tyrants. We met the following Monday at her office downtown. Jennifer was in her early 40s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. Here's the reality, she said when I finished. You have a decent case that the board exceeded its authority. The CC and Articus don't explicitly authorize a complete ban on snowmobiles, but HOA litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Even if you win, you're looking at 6 months to a year before you see a resolution, and that's if the board doesn't appeal. What are my other options? You could try to replace the board. HOA elections happen annually, right? Get yourself elected or find people who'll vote in a friendlier board. The election isn't until May. That's half the winter season, Jennifer nodded. Or you could just use the snow machine anyway and force them to take you to court. Let them spend the money on litigation instead of you. They'd have to prove damages, and good luck with that when you're just accessing public trails. They threatened $500 fines per violation. They can threaten whatever they want. Collecting is another matter. And if they try to put a lien on your property, that's when we go to court and argue the ban was invalid from the start. I left her office with a lot to think about. The smart play was probably to wait it out, campaign for board seats in the spring, and get the ban overturned properly. But every weekend that passed was a weekend of perfect riding conditions wasted, and the principle of the thing ate at me. This was my property. Patricia Morrison didn't get to tell me what I could and couldn't do on my own land. I made my decision the following Saturday. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, 6 inches of champagne powder. The kind of snow that makes for incredible riding. I had my gear on by 8 in the morning, and by 9, I was in the garage warming up the Polaris. The engine roared to life with a satisfying growl. I'd forgotten how good it felt just to hear it running. I let it warm up for a few minutes, then rolled out of the garage and headed toward the tree line at the back of my property. I made it about 20 yards before I saw Patricia. She was standing in her backyard, phone in hand, recording me. She'd probably been watching my garage, waiting. The moment I saw her, she started walking toward me, still filming. I cut the engine. "Mr. Zimmerman," she called out, her voice carrying across the snow. "You're in violation of the HOA ban. That's a $500 fine." "Patricia, I'm on my property, accessing public land." "This is legal. It's a violation of HOA rules which you agreed to follow when you purchased your home. I'm documenting this for the record." "Document away," I said. "I'll see you in court if you want to push this." I restarted the engine and took off before she could respond, heading into the trees and toward the National Forest boundary. The moment I hit the trail system, all the stress and anger melted away. This was why I lived here. The mountains stretched out in every direction, covered in pristine snow. The air was crisp and cold, and the only sound was the engine and the wind. I rode for 4 hours, hitting some of my favorite trails up near Big Mountain. When I got back that afternoon, there was already a violation notice taped to my front door. The fines kept coming. Every time I used the Snowmachine, Patricia documented it, and another $500 fine showed up in my mailbox. By mid-January, I was up to $4,000 in alleged violations. I didn't pay any of them. Instead, I forwarded them all to Jennifer Kowalski and let her handle the legal responses. "They're going to put a lien on your property," she warned me. "Are you prepared for that? Let them try. You said we'd have grounds to challenge it. We do, but it's still going to be a fight." The lien notice arrived in February. The HOA claimed I owed them $6,000 in fines, plus administrative fees and legal costs. The total came to almost $8,000. They were placing a lien on my property until the debt was satisfied. That's when Jennifer filed our lawsuit. We sued the HOA board for exceeding its authority, violating Montana property rights law, and engaging in arbitrary and capricious enforcement. The lawsuit named Patricia, Tom, Margaret, and Stephen individually, along with the HOA as an entity. Patricia was furious. I know because she left me 3 voicemails the day she was served, each one more unhinged than the last. By the 3rd message, she was threatening to countersue for harassment and emotional distress. "Bring it on," I muttered, deleting the messages. March arrived with more snow. Montana was having one of its best winters in years. The snowpack in the mountains was at 140% of normal, and the trails were in perfect condition. I kept riding, and Patricia kept documenting violations. The lien amount kept climbing. Then everything changed. March 23rd started like any normal day. I was working from home, video conferencing with a client in Boston when I heard the crack. It was distant but unmistakable, like a gunshot echoing through the valley. I muted my mic and went to the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed people gathering at the entrance to the development. Something was wrong. I told my client I needed to go and ended the call early. I grabbed my coat and walked down to the main road. A crowd of 20 or so neighbors had gathered, all staring at the same thing. The bridge was gone. Well, not gone exactly, but the eastern support had collapsed and the whole structure had twisted sideways into Eagle Creek. The bridge was the only road access in and out of Glacier Ridge. Without it, we were cut off from town. Tom Henderson was there, looking pale. "It must have been the weight of the snow," he said to no one in particular. "Too much on the structure." "Or the spring melt undermining the foundation," someone else said. I walked closer to get a better look. The bridge was a county structure built in the 70s. It had probably been due for replacement years ago. The collapse had taken out about 30 feet of roadway. Eagle Creek was running high with snowmelt, churning brown and angry below the twisted metal and concrete. "What do we do?" Margaret Wu asked. "How do we get out?" "County will have to repair it," Tom said. "But that could take weeks, maybe months, depending on the damage assessment and permitting." "Months?" Patricia's voice cut through the crowd. She just arrived, wearing designer boots that were completely impractical for snow. "We can't be cut off for months. People have jobs. We need supplies." "There's the old logging road," I said. Everyone turned to look at me. "On the north side of the development. It connects to Highway 93 about 15 miles up." "That road hasn't been maintained in years," Stephen Caldwell said. "I doubt it's even passable." "It's not passable for cars," I agreed, "but it's passable for snow machines." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Patricia's face went through several shades of red. "Don't be ridiculous," she said finally. "We'll just have to wait for the county to set up an emergency access." But the county had other ideas. By that evening, we'd received notice that bridge repairs wouldn't begin until the spring melt was complete, probably late May at the earliest. They were dealing with multiple infrastructure failures across Flathead County due to the heavy snow year. Glacier Ridge wasn't a priority because it was a small private development with only 38 homes. They would, however, provide emergency vehicle access via helicopter if anyone had a medical emergency. For everything else, we were on our own. The community Facebook page exploded. People were panicking. Most folks had maybe a week's worth of food in their houses. Medications were running low. Someone had a business trip they couldn't cancel. The Hendersons had a wedding anniversary cruise booked for April, and there I was, with the only viable transportation solution, sitting in my garage under an HOA ban. I'll admit, I thought about just letting them stew in it. Patricia had made my life hell for months over something that didn't even affect her. Now she needed the very thing she'd banned. The irony was too perfect, but I'm not that kind of person. And the truth was, my neighbors weren't the problem. Patricia was. Most of the people in Glacier Ridge were decent folks who'd been bullied by the HOA board just like me. I posted on the Facebook page that night. "I have a snow machine and can make runs to town for emergency supplies. Medical necessities, food for anyone running low, that kind of thing. Message me if you need help." The responses came within minutes. "Thank you, you're a lifesaver. I need insulin. We're almost out of baby formula. Can you pick up my prescription?" Patricia didn't respond publicly, but she sent me a private message at 11 that night. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. The next morning, I loaded up my snow machine with saddlebags and a cargo sled. I'd rigged up a system that could carry about 150 pounds of supplies. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. My first trip out was for Mrs. Henderson. She needed heart medication and had maybe 3 days left. I took her prescription information and headed out, following the old logging road north. The road was buried under 3 feet of snow, but the snow machine handled it easily. Trees had fallen across the path in a few places, requiring me to detour through the forest, but I made it to Highway 93 in about 45 minutes. The pharmacy in Kalispell was happy to fill the prescription. I grabbed some other supplies while I was in town, things I knew people would need. Bread, milk, coffee, batteries. I strapped everything to the sled and made the return trip. Mrs. Henderson cried when I handed her the medication. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "No need," I told her. "Just glad I could help." I made 3 more trips that week. Each time, more people asked for help. Nothing major, just essential supplies and prescriptions. I didn't charge anyone. It felt good to help, and frankly, it felt even better to prove that the snow machine I'd been banned from using was now the lifeline of the community. Patricia stayed silent. I'd see her watching from her window sometimes when I came and went, but she never approached me until she needed something. It was a Friday evening, almost 10 days after the bridge collapse. I'd just gotten back from a supply run and was unloading in my garage when I heard footsteps in the snow. I turned to find Patricia standing at the entrance to my garage. She looked different, less put together. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled, and she was wearing a regular winter coat instead of her usual designer gear. She looked, for the first time since I'd met her, vulnerable. "Derek," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I set down the box I was holding. "What do you need, Patricia?" "I need your help." Those 4 words must have cost her everything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "With what?" "My mother. She's in a care facility in Whitefish. I visit her 3 times a week. She has dementia, and I'm the only person she recognizes anymore. I haven't been able to see her since the bridge collapsed." I studied her face. This wasn't a manipulation. This was genuine desperation. "The facility won't let me use their helicopter service for non-medical visits," she continued. "And I can't afford a private charter. I know I don't have any right to ask you for help after everything I've done, but I'm asking anyway. Please. I just need to see my mother." I could have said no. Part of me wanted to. This woman had tried to find me into oblivion over using my own property. She'd put a lien on my house. She'd treated me like a criminal for months. But she was also someone's daughter, standing in my garage asking for help to see her mother. "When do you need to go?" I asked. Relief flooded her face. "Whenever you can take me, I'll pay you whatever you want." "I don't want your money, but I want the HOA ban lifted and the lien removed." She nodded immediately. "Done. I'll call an emergency board meeting. We'll vote on it tomorrow. And I want it in writing. Signed by the full board. You'll have it, I promise." The emergency board meeting happened Saturday morning. All 4 board members signed a resolution lifting the snowmobile ban and removing all fines and liens from my property. Patricia delivered the signed document to my house by noon. "Thank you," she said, handing it over. "Can we go this afternoon?" I took her to Whitefish on the snow machine that afternoon. She rode behind me on the buddy seat, holding on tight as we navigated the logging road. It was strange having her there, this person who'd been my antagonist for months, now completely dependent on me for transportation. The ride to Whitefish took about 90 minutes. The care facility was near downtown, and I dropped her at the door. "I'll be back in 2 hours," I said. "That enough time?" "That's perfect. Thank you, Derek, really." I spent the time wandering around Whitefish, grabbing lunch and picking up supplies for other neighbors. When I returned to the facility, Patricia was waiting outside. She looked lighter somehow, like seeing her mother had lifted a weight. The ride back was quieter. We were about halfway home when she spoke, her voice muffled by her helmet. "I'm sorry," she said, For everything. The ban, the fines, all of it, I was wrong. I didn't respond right away. Finally, I said, "Why'd you do it?" Control, I guess. My life was falling apart. The divorce, losing the house I'd lived in for 20 years, having to watch my mother forget who I am. The HOA was the one thing I could control, and I went overboard. Yeah, you did. For what it's worth, I really am sorry, and I'm going to make it right with the community. She was true to her word. At the next community meeting, Patricia publicly apologized for overstepping her authority as HOA president. She proposed several reforms to the CC and RTCS, including stricter limitations on the board's enforcement powers and a new dispute resolution process. She also announced she'd be stepping down as president at the end of her term. The bridge repairs didn't begin until May, just like the county had said. For 2 months, I ran regular supply trips for the community. It became a routine. Tuesday and Friday mornings, I'd collect everyone's lists and make the run to Kalispell or Whitefish. People started leaving supplies on their porches to share with neighbors. The community pulled together in a way I'd never seen before. Patricia and I developed an odd sort of friendship. She still visited her mother 3 times a week, and I took her every time. During those rides, we talked, really talked. She told me about her marriage falling apart, about watching her mother disappear into dementia, about the fear of losing control of everything in her life. I told her about leaving Seattle, about finding peace in Montana, about the freedom I felt on the trails. We were both just trying to find our place, it turned out. We'd just gone about it very differently. The bridge officially reopened on May 28th. The county had done a full replacement, installing a modern structure that could handle snow loads and spring flooding. There was a small ceremony with county commissioners cutting a ribbon and making speeches about infrastructure investment. Most of Glacier Ridge turned out for it. When the ribbon was cut and the first car drove across, people cheered. We could come and go freely again. The isolation was over. But something had changed in those 2 months. The community had learned to rely on each other. The Facebook page that had once been full of complaints and arguments was now full of people organizing dinners and helping with projects. The crisis had brought us together. Patricia stepped down as HOA president in June, as promised. Tom Henderson took over, with a mandate to implement the reforms Patricia had proposed. The first thing the new board did was formally codify property rights protections in the CC and RTCS. No more broad bans on lawful activities. No more arbitrary enforcement. As for me and my Snowmachine, we kept riding. The trails were clear by mid-June, but I was already looking forward to next winter. I'd proven something important, not just to Patricia and the HOA, but to myself. Standing up for your rights matters. Property ownership means something. And sometimes, the thing someone tries to take away from you becomes the very thing that saves everyone. Patricia and I stayed friends, strange as that sounds. She still calls me when she needs a ride to visit her mother, even though the bridge is fixed. We take the Snowmachine in winter and my truck in summer. She's different now, softer somehow. The divorce finalized and she started dating a guy who teaches skiing at Whitefish Mountain Resort. She seems happy. Last December, almost exactly a year after the bridge collapse, Patricia showed up at my door with a gift. It was a custom helmet for snowmobiling, bright red to match my Polaris, with Glacier Ridge Emergency Services printed on the side. "I figured it was official," she said with a smile. "You're basically our emergency response team." "That's a little dramatic," I said, but I was grinning. "Maybe. But you saved us, Derek, all of us, including me. I still have that helmet. I wear it every time I ride. A reminder of the winter when my HOA banned my Snowmachine. then begged for rides when they needed me most. It's a reminder that doing the right thing isn't always easy, and standing up for yourself sometimes means standing alone. But it's also a reminder that people can change, that enemies can become friends, and that sometimes the biggest pain in your life becomes the catalyst for something better. The logging road is officially maintained now. The county took it over as an emergency access route, clearing it every winter and keeping it passable year-round. It's become a popular snowmobile trail, with riders from all over Flathead County using it to access the national forest. My property, once the source of so much controversy, is now seen as a community asset. I expanded my garage last summer to hold 2 snow machines. The second one is available for anyone in the community who needs it, free of charge. So far, it's been used for emergency runs, for taking elderly neighbors to visit family in town, and once for helping search and rescue, find a lost hiker in the backcountry. The HOA voted unanimously to create an equipment storage area for community emergency supplies. We keep extra fuel for the snow machines, a generator, medical supplies, and non-perishable food. Just in case we ever get cut off again. Margaret Wu apologized to me in March, about a month after the bridge collapsed. She admitted that her complaint about the noise had been exaggerated, that she'd really just been going along with Patricia to stay on the board's good side. We're cool now. She brings me cookies sometimes, usually snickerdoodles because she knows they are my favorite. Tom Henderson told me privately that he'd wanted to vote against the ban, but had been too afraid of Patricia. He's turned out to be a good HOA president, focused on actual community needs instead of petty enforcement. Under his leadership, the HOA has funded improved snow removal, better street lighting, and a community garden that everyone can use. Stephen Caldwell left the board entirely. He said he'd never wanted to be on it in the first place and had only joined because his wife pressured him. They moved to Missoula last fall, and the Johnsons bought their house. The Johnsons have 3 kids and 2 snowmobiles of their own. The property values Patricia was so worried about. They've actually gone up, partly because Glacier Ridge now has a reputation as a tight-knit community that takes care of its own. I think about that winter a lot. How close I came to just giving up and moving. How the lawsuit was heading toward a protracted legal battle that would have cost me tens of thousands of dollars. How everything changed because a bridge collapsed at exactly the right time to prove what I'd been saying all along. There's a lesson in there somewhere about patience and persistence and standing up for what's right. But there's also a lesson about grace and forgiveness. I could have let Patricia suffer, could have refused to help her when she needed it most. Part of me wanted to. But that would have made me as petty and small as she'd been. Helping her, helping everyone, turned out to be the best decision I could have made. Not just because it resolved the HOA situation, but because it built something real in this community. We're not just neighbors anymore. We're people who have relied on each other, who have seen each other at our worst and chosen to help anyway. The snow machine sits in my garage now, ready for winter. The trails are calling, and the forecast says we're in for another big snow year. The Polaris is tuned up, the gear is organized, and I've got a new GPS unit that maps the backcountry trails in real time. But more than that, I've got a community that has my back. A neighborhood that went from hostile to harmonious. An HOA that learned its lesson about overreach and arbitrary authority. And I've got a friend in Patricia Morrison, the woman who tried to ban my snow machine and ended up learning that the things that make us different are often the things that make us valuable. Last week, she asked if I'd be interested in joining the HOA board. There's an opening, and she thinks I'd be good at it. I'm considering it, not because I want power or control, but because I've learned something important about community governance. It works best when the people making decisions are the people actually living with the consequences. The irony isn't lost on me. A year ago, I was fighting the HOA tooth and nail. Now I might join it. But that's growth, I suppose. Understanding that systems aren't inherently bad, just the people who sometimes run them. And knowing that the best way to change a broken system isn't always to fight it from the outside. Sometimes you have to get inside and fix it yourself. Winter is coming again to Whitefish, Montana. The mountains are waiting, covered in snow that sparkles in the sunlight. The trails are pristine and perfect. And somewhere in the garage of a 5-acre property in the Glacier Ridge development, a cherry-red Polaris RMK sits ready to ride. This time, nobody's going to stop me. And if they try, well, there's 37 other families in this neighborhood who will have something to say about it. Because they remember the winter when the road closed, when the bridge collapsed, when the only way in or out was on the machine the HOA had tried to ban. They remember who helped them, and they remember who tried to stop him. That's the thing about communities. They have long memories. The good deeds stick around just as long as the bad ones. Patricia Morrison learned that the hard way. She also learned that people are willing to forgive if you're willing to change. I ride past her house every time I head to the trails now. Sometimes she's outside and she waves. I always wave back. It's a small gesture, but it means something. It means we're past the anger and the fights and the certified letters. It means we're neighbors, the way neighbors should be. The sun is setting over the mountains as I write this, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow morning, I'll fire up the Polaris and head into the backcountry. Maybe I'll see some elk or a moose or just miles of untouched powder. Maybe I'll run into other riders on the trails, people from other towns who have heard about the access from Glacier Ridge. Whatever happens, I'll be doing it legally with the full support of my HOA and my community. The ban is gone, the lien is removed, and the lawsuit was dropped. Patricia signed off on everything and the board made it official. My property rights are secure. But more importantly, I've found my place here, not just geographically but socially. These are my people now, this collection of families living in the mountains of Montana, trying to make lives for themselves in a beautiful but challenging place. We've been through something together, something that bonded us in ways that normal neighborhood interactions never could. That bridge collapse was the worst thing that could have happened. It exposed the absurdity of the Snowmachine ban. It gave me the opportunity to prove my value to the community. And it gave Patricia Morrison a chance to see beyond her need for control and recognize what really matters: family, community, helping each other when times get hard. Those are the things that last. Those are the things that matter when everything else falls apart. The HOA bylaws have been amended now. There are protections built in, safeguards against the kind of arbitrary enforcement that Patricia engaged in. Future boards will have less power to impose blanket bans on lawful activities. Property owners have more rights, more avenues for appeal, more protection against overreach. It's not perfect. No system ever is, but it's better than it was. And that's all you can really ask for. I've been asked to speak at other HOA meetings in Flathead County to share the story of what happened here. Some communities are dealing with their own Patricia Morrisons, their own petty tyrants drunk on small-scale power. I tell them the same thing every time. Stand up for your rights, but don't be a jerk about it. Fight the good fight, but leave room for redemption. People can change. Systems can improve, but only if we're willing to put in the work. my 5 acres in Glacier Ridge are more than just property now. They're home in the truest sense of the word. A place where I belong, where I'm valued, where I can be myself without fear of arbitrary rules or vindictive enforcement. The national forest stretches out behind my property, wild and free and waiting to be explored. And the Polaris sits ready in my garage, no longer controversial, no longer banned. Just a tool for adventure and, when necessary, a lifeline for my community. That's all I ever wanted. The freedom to use my property as I saw fit, within reasonable bounds. The ability to access the wilderness that drew me to Montana in the first place. The respect of my neighbors and the support of my community. I got all of that, but not in the way I expected. Not through litigation or force, but through service and perseverance. By proving that the thing Patricia feared was actually the thing that would save us all. There's poetry in that, I think. Justice with a side of irony. As winter approaches and the first real snows begin to fall, I find myself grateful for everything that happened. The ban, the fight, the bridge collapse, all of it. Because it led to this, to a community that works, to friendships that matter, to a home that's truly mine. The mountains are calling and I'm ready to answer. The trails are waiting, covered in fresh snow that no one has touched yet. Somewhere up there, in the high country above Glacier Ridge, there are meadows and peaks and vistas that take your breath away. And I have a snow machine that can take me there, legal and approved, with my HOA's blessing and my community's gratitude. Derek Zimmerman, software engineer from Seattle, made good in Montana. Found his place, fought his battles, and came out the other side better for it. The HOA that tried to stop me ended up needing me. The neighbor who became my enemy became my friend. And the property I bought for its trail access became the lifeline for 38 families when disaster struck. That's my story. That's the winter my HOA banned my snow machine, then begged for rides when the road closed. It's a story about standing up for yourself, about helping others even when you don't have to, and about the power of communities to come together when it matters most. The Polaris is gassed up and ready. The trails are calling. And tomorrow morning, when the sun rises over the Montana mountains, I'll be riding. Free, legal, and grateful for every mile. That's all I ever wanted. And it turns out it's exactly what I got.